ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So, continuing on with our discussion of Agamas and South Indian Vaishnavism by Dr. V. Vardachari. So, here we are on page 386. For those of you following along with the text, if somebody doesn't have the text, they can send me an email or text, and I can give you a link. You can download the text. So we're talking about different, we're talking about agamas and temples. And here we're talking about, so the Parameshwara, the Padma, the Ishvara, and Ishvara Samhitas, and Brigu's Kriyadikara mention the vehicles for some of the sessions, while the Sri Prashna and other Samhitas give the entire list. So we're talking here about festivals, different festivals and processions and different vahanams. Yeah. While the Sri Prashna and other Samhitas give the entire list, all the texts are agreed upon having the elephant, right, Yanai Vahanam, and the horse vehicles, otherwise known as Kudurai Vahanam, on the 6th and 8th days of the festival in the night, in the evening. So usually in a Brahmotsavam or in any festival, there'll be processions morning and evening. So the elephant and the horse are done in the evening on the 6th and 8th days of the festival. And the car festival, which usually comes at near the end of the Utsava, or the chariot festival, is held on the 9th day, when Churnabhishekam, right, Mrigaya, and Avabrita, right, which is the taking of the ritual bath at the end of the Utsava, are also held in most of the temples. While it is held on the 7th day in some temples, Churna means powder, like that. Churna Abhishekam, I'm not quite sure exactly what they mean here by Churna Abhishekam, is held on the 6th day there, and Mrigaya, and Avabrita on the 9th day. I'm not sure what it means by Mrigaya. The Mriga means deer. Anyway, the Ishvara Samhita mentions the vehicles without specific reference to their being used in the morning or the evening, right? So because there are 2 processions a day. It's worthwhile noting 2 striking features. One is that Garudotsava would mean a festival of where Garuda is shown. So sometimes they have a Garuda Vahanam, either a silver or a gold one, is held. One is that Garudotsava is held in the night in many temples, and in the morning in a few. It is held on the 5th day of the festival in the night, or on the 4th day in the night in some temples like Sri Rangam. The temples as in Kanchipuram and Tiruvallikeni, which is in Triplicane in Chennai or Madras, right? There's a Parthasarathy temple. It is celebrated on the 3rd day in the morning. Secondly, the car festival is fixed for the 7th day at Kanchi, Melkote, Tiruvallikeni, and other places. At Kanchi, the huge car used to get back to its destination after passing through the streets almost invariably after a delay of a few days. Okay, so this sometimes happens. In the olden days, they used to have the wheels of the chariot, the Lord's rathas, would break or would get partially break, and the chariot would break down. It wouldn't be movable, so they'd have to come and they'd have to repair the wheel on the spot, and this would take several days. It's happened in Sri Rangam. In many temples it's happened, but now they have usually steel wheels or metal wheels, and so it doesn't usually happen these days. So, and in that case, the avabrita, or the ritual bath at the end of the Utsava, on the 9th day used to get postponed because you have to wait until the Ratotsava is finished. In general, it must be remarked that except for the festivals on certain days, the pattern available in the prominent temples has influenced the system in others. So it mentions here in the footnote is saying here, Aniruddha's account is vague. So Aniruddha Samhita, Purushottama, I guess Samhita, chapter 24, verse 75:6 mentions Hamsa, the swan vehicle, Simha, the lion vehicle, Garuda, the eagle vehicle, and Shesha is the snake vehicle, right, as the different vehicles to be used on the first 4 days respectively, right? And there are many others. There's a Yali, which is sort of a mythical creature, and there's a Kalpavriksha and a Surya Vahana and a Surya Prabha and a Chandra Prabha, which look like a Teja or an effulgence of the sun and the moon. Then we have here, we have, what does it say? Agamas offer only a broad outline of the conduct of the festival, leaving the inner details to be settled by the acharya, or the head priest, who must be well versed in the charya section, or the charya aspect of the agama of the temple, according to the exigencies of the locality. Interesting details are given for the conduct of the avabrita. A special time and general one are given for this, according as the temple is Swayam Vyakta, or where God self-manifested himself, right, of his own accord, as at Sri Rangam, Divya, consecrated by a devata or deity or God, as at Kanchipuram and Alwar Tirunagari, which is down in Tirunelveli district in the very south of India. Saida, where siddhas or perfected beings installed the deity, and Arsha, where the deity was installed by rishis. It's called Arsha, or sages. The Tirtha bearer, which, if we remember, is the form of the Lord, which is slightly smaller than the Utsava bearer, which is used for, it's sometimes also called Shnapana bearer, but here it's Tirtha bearer, is taken to the Tirtha, or the place where the Avabrita Snan is to take place, the ritualistic bathing at the end of the Utsava, is offered special worship and then taken to the holy tank or river, where the acharya must stand in the water reaching up to his navel. After sprinkling holy powder on the heads of the devotees, he must plunge into the water along with the tirtha bearer. All the devotees assembled there will have a dip in the water at the same time. As an alternative, the snapana or Bali bearer, right, which is also a small Utsava murti, will be taken instead of the tirtha bearer, so either the snapana bearer or the Bali bearer. The Vaikhanasa Agamas enjoin Sudarshana to be taken in the place of the Avabrita, in the place for Avabrita, which is therefore called Chakratirtha. Okay, so we see this in the famous Tirupati Balaji temple in Tirumala, that they take the chakra, the small Sudarshana deity, and that will be immersed in the tirtha there, the chakra tirtha there, or Swami Pushkarini, let's say, right? The plunge is to be the tank next to the temple. The plunge is to be taken thrice. Even persons related to those who take a plunge get rid of their sins and become prosperous. So you don't even have to actually take a bath with the deity yourself. If you're just related to somebody who does that, the Shastras say that you're going to get freed from all your sins. Okay, so and there's a long history in Hinduism, of course, of washing away sins by taking bath in, for instance, holy rivers like the Ganges, or holy tanks in different sacred places. But here we take not only in a holy river or holy tank, but also along with the Lord himself in his form as a tirtha bearer or Shnapana bearer or Bali bearer. So on the next day, on the day next to the Avabrita day, Pushpa Yaga, or Pushpa Vahana, I'm not sure. Pushpa Yaga is performed in elaborate detail with profuse use of flowers. This is now called Dwadasaradhana. Dwadasaradhana, which means 12 different types of worship. Care is to be bestowed on choosing the right kind of flowers and in conducting the festival at the specified time. So after all of this, after the Dwaja Avarohana means taking down the flagpole, taking down the flag from the flagpole, which was hoisted at the beginning of the festival. It comes down. The Utsava bearer is to be taken to the Sanctum Sanctorum and placed near the Dhruva bearer. The Dhruva bearer means the Mula bearer or the main deity, the immovable deity. Please, anybody can join. Okay, so when the vehicle with the Utsava bearer, well decorated with ornaments and flowers, is being carried through the streets, no one must stand on or sit in or occupy any portion of the vehicle. And the vehicle of the Utsava bearer. And so that's some sort of a rule there. An exception is made in the case of the elephant vehicle, so the Yanai Vahanam, right, where on which the Acharya is to sit behind the Utsava deity with the goad in his hand. So you see this in the Sri Rangam Yanai Vahanam or elephant Vahana, that what will happen is that one of the pujaris or one of the archakas will sit behind the Utsava deity on top of the elephant, and then even it's so big that they'll have two other pujaris with chamaras standing there also in the front, fanning him. The archaka may also sit in front of the part of the vehicle. As against this general rule, the acharya, according to another text, can sit in front in all other vehicles as well. Those who bear the vehicle through the streets must wear a coat and a turban and be adorned with flowers and ornaments. Okay, so I haven't really seen that this is strictly followed these days, but in any case, they have to be properly dressed. The acharya and archaka, the head priest and other priests, right, also must wear a turban. This practice has disappeared except in Sri Rangam in the case of the bearers of the vehicle, and perhaps in Tirupati and Tirumala, where only one archaka wears the turban. However, the acharya who occupies the elephant vehicle wears invariably a turban, right? So this is seen. A significant feature of the procession, when the Utsava deity is taken through the streets of the locality in the vehicle or without it, is the recitation of the Alwar's compositions, that is the 4,000 Nalayar Divya Prabandham in Tamil. In its, okay, so here was a footnote about that Dwadasa Aradhana, or it's also called Dwadasakshara mantra, is to be used during that Pushpa Yaga, right, or worship of the Lord with many, many flowers. Puja is to be repeated with each of the 12 syllables, and that is the 12-syllable mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Since flowers are used, this is called a Pushpa Yaga. Pushpa meaning flower, Yaga meaning sacrifice, a big sacrifice. And for details, we can see the book Kriya Kairava Chandrika, which is according to Padma Samhita, which is one of our favorite texts, Kriya Kairava Chandrika. We're studying that at the moment. So, okay, so just to finish off that sentence, the recitation of the Alwar's compositions in the forefront and recitations of the Vedas behind the deity. So there are two groups of Brahmins, one going in front of the procession of the Lord, one going at the back of the procession of the Lord. The one in the front chants the Tamil Prabandhas of the Alwars. The one in the back chants the Vedas. In Sri Rangam today, we see that there are actually two or more groups of Brahmins in the back of the deity, because you have a Tengalai group and a Wadagalai group, and maybe there's also another group chanting Yajurveda, and then you might have even another group chanting Samaveda. So you have these different groups, but they're all chanting Vedas in the back. So this is very interesting because normally you would think that the Vedas have prominence, but in Sri Vaishnavism, the Nalaya Divya Prabandham in Tamil has prominence. So it goes in the front. So the Agama makes a general statement about the use of the compositions in the bhasha meaning a language other than Sanskrit. Some texts, however, mention that the best Veda composed in Tamil should be sung in the front. Okay, so that's very interesting. So he's given us some quotes here from Ishvara Samhita, two from Ishvara Samhita, then from Sri Prashna Samhita, telling us that we can have these processions. We can have these ghostis, what are groups of Brahmins who are chanting the local, the Tamil Divya Prabandham in front of the deity. This practice must have been introduced after Natha Muni. So that makes sense because in the Sri Vaishnava system, Natha Muni is the acharya who rediscovered the 4,000 songs of the Alwars, having been something obscured or lost over time, from the time of the Alwars up until the time of Natha Muni. So he had a vision of Nam Alwar, who presented him with these 4,000 songs again. So he reintroduced this, and should have formed part of the conduct of the festival during the time of Ramanuja. And in fact, the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival, which goes for 21 days in Sri Rangam, which is the biggest annual festival, is also called Adhyayana Utsava, an Utsava or a festival of Adhyayana, of chanting. And it's not the normal Adhyayana that we understand when we use the word Adhyayana. We usually mean chanting of Vedas, but here it means to chant the Prabandhas. So throughout that Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival, all the 4,000 songs are chanted to the Lord over the course of 21 days and in a specific order. So that this practice was disputed in the 14th century is evident from Vedanta Deshika's successful effort in silencing the opponents and establishing it on firm grounds. This is very interesting because some people, when they're asked about what is the difference between the Wadagalais and Tengalais, the Wadagalais having as most important acharya Vedanta Deshika, and the Tengalais as having Manavala Mahmuni and Pilalokacharya as their most important acharyas, they'll say, well, the Tengalais emphasize Tamil and the Wadagalais emphasize Sanskrit, but that's a very simplistic understanding. It's actually a fact that both the Wadagalais and the Tengalais, they both emphasize the chanting of the Nalaya Divya Prabandham. And here we can see that Vedanta Deshika, although he's the main acharya for the Wadagalais, he was instrumental in successfully silencing the opponents who wanted to stop, apparently in the 14th century, the chanting of the Nalaya Divya Prabandham at certain festivals. So the Agamas do not make clear as to what the composition of the Alwars are to be sung in the forefront. So they don't say which Alwars prayers and what prayers have to be said. An answer to this question is suggested in the following verse by Vedanta Deshika from Rahasya Trayasaram, which is his magnum opus, 1-2. Okay, so what it says is, I bow to those whose service consists of cleaning the streets of the Lord of Hastigiri. Hastigiri means the hill upon which Lord Vardaraja sits in his temple in Kanchipuram, in Little Kanchi, Vishnu Kanchi. So, and Vedanta Deshika was from a suburb. He was born in a suburb of Kanchi called Tupul. So he says, who keep off those that raise the why and wherefore in the system, which is concerned with karma and Brahman. Okay, so this is the sloka by Vedanta Deshika. The systems of karma and Brahman refer to the Mimamsa and Vedanta systems. Okay, so the system of karma refers to the Karma Mimamsa or Karma Kanda. It's also known as Purva Mimamsa system. And the Mimamsa means a discussion or deliberation. And the Vedanta system is the Uttara Mimamsa, or the later discussion, the subsequent discussion after Karmakanda, because the Vedas have different sections. They have the Karmakanda section, they have the Jnanakanda section, and they have the Upasanakanda section. So basically the Upasana and Jnanakanda sections, we're talking about the Vedanta, which means the Upanishadic sections of the Vedas. There, the persons who do not have a belief in either or both of these and who want to raise queries as to the basis of every theory and to criticize sanctioned in these, or something, yeah. In these, in Kanchi, there were people who served God by cleaning the streets through which the Utsava deity was taken. They were not swept by whose honorable profession would, however, be pleasing to them, but eminent in silencing the objections raised by the capricious critics. They must be not only aware of the basis of the theories and practices enjoined in the two systems, but also practice what they firmly believe in the service of cleaning the streets by these eminent scholars must have formed part of the conduct of the disciplined wise men, or sistachara. Sistachara usually means what our ancestors have done. You know, what is culturally and historically, traditionally accepted. Right. So cleaning of the streets in Kanchi by these must have been undertaken before the procession starts from the temple. That is, that persons must be moving well in advance of the procession. Yeah. So anyway, so the point is, even if you go today to any temple where there's going to be a procession, usually what happens is the ladies of the house come out who live in the Agraharam, which is the Brahmin area or the Brahmin neighborhood surrounding any temple. They come out and they wash down the streets, and then they do columns or rangolis, special certain auspicious geometrical figures on the ground where the deity is going to come. But okay, so the author does not write the streets in Kanchi, but the streets of the Lord of Hastigiri, which means that they belong to him in the sense that the Utsava deity should be taken in procession through them. Some scholars take the word Viti Shodaka Kinkaran. Kinkaran would be the servants, right? Those servants. Shoda meaning to purify or to clean, and Viti refers to the streets, right? Viti. Even if you go today, Uttara Chitravidi, these are the names of Sataravidi. These are different names of streets around the temple of Sri Rangam. So Viti Shodaka Kinkaram means the servants who clean the streets. Used in plural, it's Kinkaran means plural, to denote Atreya Ramanuja, the preceptor of Vedanta Deshika. That's interesting. So why does it, some scholars take that to mean Atreya Ramanuja because it's in plural. The plural could just be, the reason for using the plural here could just be honorific. But in any case, he's saying that some scholars think that denotes, that word denotes Atreya Ramanuja, the guru or the preceptor of Vedanta Deshika. Others take it to mean some other acharya who attended to this work and who taught the Tiruvaimoli. Tiruvaimoli, remember, is about 1,100 verses by the main work of Namalwar, the head of the Alwars. So that taught the Tiruvaimoli to Vedanta Deshika. Okay, so they think it could also mean the acharya that taught the Tiruvaimoli to Vedanta Deshika. The cleaning of the streets is said to have meant the removal of the arguments of the opponents. So the Lord can actually go there. So removal of the arguments of opponents to Vaishnavism is the analogy of cleaning the streets around the temple. Okay, so the Sarva Samvadini, which is a commentary on Rahasyatraya Saram, mentions Appiliyar, that is Atreya Ramanuja, right, the maternal uncle of Vedanta Deshika and his acharya, as meant here by the word Viti Shodaka Kinkaran. The notes that some other acharya was of the author could also have been meant here. See page 41. Okay, so this may be conceded, but it's also possible to offer another interpretation. In silencing the arguments of the opponents is already stated in the second quarter of this sloka, and so this could not have been meant as by the act of cleaning the streets. Again, it is not clear as to why the respectable person who cleaned the streets should have taught the Tiruvaimoli Moli, in particular to Vedanta Deshika, right? So we can also note here that there's some examples of respectable people cleaning the streets in front of the processions, just like in the Jagannath Rath Yatra in Puri. The king actually used to come and sweep the streets in front of the chariots, like that. King Pratiparudra used to do that, and today even the king does that. So cleaning the streets could symbolically represent the purification of the streets and making them fit for God's procession through them. Well, that's what it means. Literally, you have to clean the streets if you want the procession to come. But the analogy of getting rid of the opponent's doctrines and objections is a very good one. This purification is service, kainkarya, which may be mental, verbal, or physical. So kainkarya can be any one of those. All the three kinds are applicable here, but it may preferably denote the verbal one, suggested by the word kotas kuta nivartakan. This should then mean that these pious people recite some holy passages which cannot be the Vedas, as the reciters of them have to follow God in the procession. So the Vedic chanting has to happen at the end of the procession. What they recite could not be simple stotras, but poems, literary in formation and philosophical in import, which could bear parity with the Vedas. Since the days of Nathamuni and Yamunacharya, the Ubhaya Vedanta, the word Vedanta, of course, means the Upanishads and the Upanishadic philosophy of the Vedas, right? And Ubhaya means both Vedantas. So in Sri Vaishnavism, we consider the Tamil Nalaya Divya Prabandham, the 4,000 songs of the Alvars in Tamil, to have equal import to the Upanishads of the Vedas. So it's called Ubhaya Vedantam, the Veda of two types, the Tamil Veda and the Sanskrit Veda. The Ubhaya Vedantam concept has been in vogue. While one Vedanta is based on the Upanishads, the other is based on the Nalaya Divya Prabandham. If the Vedas are to be recited before the deity, the compositions of the Alvars must be recited in front, if the Vedas are to be recited behind, right? Like the Vedic mantras, which have the power to cleanse anything of its impurity and make it flawless, the songs of the Alvars too should be deemed to have a similar power to make the streets free from all worldly impurities and make them fit for the Lord to be carried through them. Hence, it would be appropriate to take the word Viti Shodaka Kinkaran, right, which we talked about above, in the sense of those who recite the compositions of the Alvars in front of the Lord. Rightly enough, those who recite these compositions head the procession. The pipers and others, because there'll be musical instruments also being played, right, who contribute the music, follow them. So musical accompaniment. Such highly learned persons could not be mere sweepers. Mere cleaning of the streets is not also meant here. So, or the recitation of the compositions of the Alvars in the front may be explained in a different manner. These compositions composed in Tamil do not get included in the agamic rituals followed in the temple. If there is a slip in the conduct of the ritualistic performance in the temple, some prokshana or sprinkling, otherwise known by some people as kumbhabhishekam, right, is required to be done in the temple. And this is done from time to time, usually about every 12 years or something. The whole temple is renovated. But in case there's some mistake done in the ritualistic performance, or if somebody dies in one of the houses of the Brahmins in the Agraharam area, which is part of the temple, the suburb of Brahmins around the temple, the traditional place where they live, then they perform this samprokshanam, or sprinkling or purifying the temple. If the alwa's compositions are not recited, there is no expiatory rite ordained to atone for this. The priests in the temple are not worried about it. So, in other words, if the prabandhas are chanted, then everything is considered okay. If the prabandhas are not chanted, then they consider that nothing actually got purified. So this Samprokshana, I think the last time it happened in Sri Rangam, myself and my wife were there. We went up on the top of our roof and we could see them pouring water and sprinkling water, sacred water from sacred kumbhas over all the 21 gopurams around us. So, yet these compositions have been offered a status equal to that of the Vedas in the conduct of daily worship and public festivals. The ritual in the temple is not taken to get completed if the compositions are not sung at the intervals that they're assigned by the early acharyas. If the Divya Prabandham should have a place in the temple worship, it is necessary to attend to it without disturbing the procedural details that have been in practice and followed in accordance with the prescriptions laid down in the Agamas. It's worth noting here that the recitation of the Vedas is always done behind the procession, that is, after the deity. This is the case even in the temples of Shiva. So in South India, they also have a similar, the Shaivites, not Smartas, but the people who are actual Shaivites. Smartas will worship any form of God. According to them, all forms of God, all devatas are equal because they're all manifestations of Brahman, like that. But according to the Vaisnavites, called Veera Vaishnavas, they worship only Vishnu and his retinue, his parivara, his family, and his attendants. And the Shaivites will worship only Shiva and Shakti and their attendants and their family, like that, their parivara. So for those people, for the Shaivites, they also recite the Vedas in the back of their processions. In the front of their processions, they will recite they have what's called Tevaram, or it's called they have also 64 saints or 63 saints, I think, not called Nayanmars, right? Where we have 12 saints called Alwars, they have Nayanars. And the Nayanars, they have produced also Tamil poetry in praise of Shiva. So they'll recite those. In fact, during the Margali month, the month of Margali at the end of the year, Margashirsha, the Vaishnavas will all be chanting Tirupavai, the songs of Andal, the 30 songs of Andal, and the Shaivites will be reciting another song called Tiruvembavai, which is their Shaivite version. So when the heads of religious institutions are taken in procession around the streets and in the villages, the Vedas are recited behind them. So that means even when acharyas and gurus and holy people are taken around in procession, they also have the Vedas recited. So also when Mahaprasad is either the garlands or the food offerings, leftovers, which are taken in procession in the streets with a lot of pomp to go to particular acharyas, tirumalagas, or houses, right, and presented to those traditional houses. At that time also, that the Vedas will be chanted in those processions, and also when the bridegroom starts for the bride's house for a marriage. So when the bridegroom, the Vara, when he goes to the house of the bride for the marriage, right? People also will chant the Vedas. A time-honored practice like this cannot be disturbed on any account. So the Vaishnavacharyas chose to provide the reciters of the Prabandhas in Tamil with a separate place of honor in the temple processions. To place them just behind the deity would amount to disturbing the Hori custom. To place them behind the Veda reciters would mean that they are no better than the bhajana gostis, right? So they also behind the Veda, but the people reciting the Sanskrit Vedas, they also sometimes have people singing bhajans and singing kirtanas, like that. The Prabandhas have been considered as Dravida Vedas, Dravida meaning the south of India, Dravida Desha, and Tamil being a Dravida language, right? So the Dravida Vedas, the Vedas in Tamil, right? And so they are placed in the front of the procession. Thus, the deity is taken in the procession, which is led by the recitation of one Veda and followed by that of another, meaning the Tamil Veda comes in front, the Sanskrit Veda comes in the back. The three Vedas, right, meaning the Rig, Yajus, and Sama, right? Sometimes we talk about the Atharva as being the fourth, but many times we just talk about three Vedas, those Rig, Yajus, and Sama. The Akayana recension of the Veda, which is considered the original Veda that out of which those divisions were made by Vedavyasa. The Satvada and the other Samhitas, right, which we've spoken about, are to be recited to the right of the Lord, right? So to the right, on the right-hand side of the Lord. And the Itihasas and Puranas, right? So basically, those are considered, all of those things are considered all like Nigama, like Veda, like Shruti. And on the other side, on the left side of the Lord, right, the Itihasas and Puranas, right, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and the 18 Mahapuranas on his left during processions. So we don't see that happens so much anymore. I had one teacher in Sri Rangam. He used to go behind and read from Vishnu Purana or from one of the Puranas or Itihasas. So others who are grammarians and logicians may also join the procession. So here he's saying that they can also be recited, these works by grammarians and logicians, such as Panini's Astadhyay, the Sutras of Grammar, or the Nyaya Sutras, Gautama's Nyaya Sutras. They can also be recited. And this is very common. We have a thing called Shatamurai. Shatamurai is sort of like at the time of Mantra Pushpam, at the end of a puja, right? Different verses from different books of learning and shastras will be recited, and that will include even the sutras from the logicians and the grammatical schools. So there should be provision for good music at that time. The flute, right? The flute, the veena, which is a stringed instrument, and other instruments will be played upon. There will also be temple dances. So this is not so much in vogue these days, but there used to be special dances that were part of the temple, troupe that would do that. So they were actually like basically employees of the temple. They were only to dance for the temple, for the deity. All these are to provide attraction. The atmosphere must not be puritanic, severe, and solemn. Even those who do not have much faith in God should be attracted to witness the procession of God, right, of the deity. There may be people whose interest may lie only in the appreciation of the music and the dance, but still they'll be attracted. Some may like only to see the paraphernalia and the show. By witnessing these, they will have the occasion to have a look or a darshan of God, of the deity coming on the Vahanam. This is enough for the spirit of the Agamas to provide the conduct of the festivals. And here he's given an example for a couple of slokas here from Poshkara Samhita, chapter 1, verses 31 to 32. After the return of the procession to the temple, in each session, the 4 Vedas must be recited. So that doesn't mean the whole 4 Vedas, but some portions of the 4 Vedas, to be followed by recitation of Tamil compositions of the Alwars, the Divya Pravandam. Then stotras, different stotras, which we talked about before when we talked about the different Sri Vaishnava literature that grew out of the Pancharatric school, or the influence of the Pancharatra. So we have, for instance, we have Yamuna's Stotra Ratna and Sri Stuti, and then we have Panchastava of Kuresha and all these different stotras, right? And then, of course, so many stotras by Vedanta Deshika and different acharyas. The stotras in Sanskrit and Tamil are to be sung in the praise of the Lord. The practice that is now in vogue is to conclude the recitation of the Alwars of the Alwars compositions at first, and then that of the Vedas. So, among other festivals which last over many days, mention must be made of the Navaratri. Navaratri is the 9 days leading up to where we do Shakti worship, Durga Lakshmi Saraswati worship, and the 10th day is Vijayadasami, the day when Lord Rama killed Ravana. Navaratri, and the Adhyayana festivals, which I talked about before. The Adhyayana festival is the festival of the Vaikuntha Ekadasi. So where all of the Divya Puranam are chanted like that. So the former is to be conducted on the Navami of Asvayuja month. It begins with the Amavasya day, right? So Amavasya would be the new moon. And so it goes for 9 days of the Amavasya, the Pratama, the Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturthi, like that. Or so the Pratama, up until the Navami. And as the name denotes, it's primarily intended for Shri. What name? Okay. Okay. The Lord is to be taken on a horse vehicle, that is the Kudirai Vahanam, right, on the 9th day to the Vani tree, also known as the Shami tree, right? So this actually happens in Sri Rangam. What happens is the Lord comes on his golden horse and he goes out the east gate, which is where my house is in Sri Rangam, by the white Gopuram or the Vela Gopuram, and he goes out the east gate and he actually goes out to another temple, which is called the Katalagiya Singha temple, which is a Lakshmi Narasimha temple it means beautiful forest lion, because it used to be in a forest, a place where Pilalokacharya used to give lectures. And he goes out to that place, and then in the evening he comes out and he is seen to shoot an arrow at a tree, at this Shami tree or Vani tree, which represents Ravana, like that. So he's killing Ravana on the eve of Vijayadasami. Now this is held on the Dasami called Vijayadasami, correct. The Adhyayana festival, right, is also called the Margashirsha festival because it comes in the month of Margashirsha, the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival. This is done for 10 days before and 10 days after the Shukla Ekadasi, the Ekadasi of the 11th day of the bright fortnight. Vishvaksena and deities of devotees of the Lord are brought into the presence of God. So this is held inside the temple. There's 2 parts to it. There's Pagalpatu, and there's one part which is done inside the first 10 days before they open the Vaikuntha Dwara, or the Paramapadavasal, the gate to heaven, right, on the 11th day, on the actual Ekadasi. So 10 days it's done inside in the Arjuna Mandapa, which is a porch or a mandap inside the temple, and the deity is of Namperamal, the Utsava Murti of Ranganatha, sits there, and then all the Utsava deities of all the Acharyas and Alwars will come there, and there are special Aryas, special descent people who to chant the Nalaya Divya Prabandham, and they will chant it, and they'll also do little dances and hand mudras and things to give some more meaning to the poetry of the Alwars, and this is called Abhinayam. And it's only there in, I think, Sri Rangam still, and maybe Sriviliputtur, which is the place of Andal. They're the only 2 places where they still do this Abhinayam, the Aryas do there. And you'll see the Aryas wear this type of fez-like hat called a kula, with Shankachakra and Tilak on the front of it, like that, and they'll have small symbols, hand symbols, and they'll chant the Divya Prabandham and do some dancing and hand mudras. Abhinayam. So this 10 days inside the Arjuna Mandapa, inside the temple, and then they go out on the day of Ekadasi. They open the Paramapadavasal. The deity very early in the Brahma Muhurta time goes on a journey, and he goes to a place called the Viraja Mandapa, where the deity is followed by all of his devotees, and he does Shraddha for all his devotees who are considered to have died and are following him to heaven. And so he does the Shraddha ceremony for them, and then at the Viraja Mandapa, which Viraja is the river between the material and spiritual worlds, where the soul, after going through the Achirati Marga, the path of light after leaving this body, will go to Sri Vaikuntham. He will then take a bath in this river and then emerge on the other bank completely pure and take up his service of the Lord forever in Vaikuntham. So this is all symbolically done during this day of Vaikuntha Ekadasi in the early morning. So then what happens is the Lord goes out the the gate of Vaikuntha and he goes to the 1,000-pillared mandap in Sri Rangam, and he sits there in the 1,000-pillared mandap. So for the 10 days after the Shukla Ekadasi of Margashirsha, he will sit in the 1,000-pillared mandap, and they will finish reciting all the Nala Divya Prabandham to him. But all the deities of the Acharyas and Alwas will also go there as well, and the Aryas will do the same Abhinayam and chanting of Divya Prabandham there. That is the Margashirsha, or it's also called the Adhyayanotsava festival. Yes, the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival. So they're all worshipped by the recitation of the Vedas, Tamil Prabandhas and Stotras in Sanskrit, Prakrita and Tamil. Prakrita, I'm not sure exactly why they say that there is recitation of Prakrita. I'm not sure about that. The Tamil Prabandhas are called here the compositions Gata of devotees. There's explicit reference to this in the Nalaya Divya Prabandham itself. I'm sorry, to the Nalaya Divya Prabandham, there's a specific reference to that in the Ishwar Samhita, excuse me. Ishwar Samhita, chapter 13, verse 246. So he's given the quote here. The deities of Alwas and Acharyas, who are referred to by the general name Bhakta, right? We'll call them Bhakta Bimbas, right? Are to be honored on this occasion. And again, he gives us a quote from the 13th chapter of Ishvara Samhita, the previous verse, 245. Some Agama texts enjoin the celebration of festivals in every month. So you can have festivals like this for at least 10 days. This festival is the biggest festival. It goes for 20 days or 21 days. But usually you'll have these festivals for at least 10 days in every month. And there may be one exception. I think there's in the month of Kumbha, then they don't do in Sri Rangam, but we have to make certain for that. But mostly the most festivals, if you want to see the most festivals, you go to Sri Rangam, because Sri Rangam temple can practically there's at least 1 or 2 10-day festivals every month. So no Naimitika or Kamya festivals. Again, Naimitika, there's 3 types of utsavas, or 3 types of festivals, just like there's 3 types of karmas that we can do. Nitya, which is daily or eternal, Naimitika, which occurs occasionally, and Kamya, which is usually not done by Vaishnavas, which is for a particular material benefit, right? So because the Vaishnavas are all surrendered to the Lord, they're all prapanas, and they're all completely surrendered to the Lord, they're not interested in any material gain, so there's no Kamya festivals for them. No Kamya Utsavas or no Kamya karmas. But no Naimitika or Kamya festival is to be celebrated for 4 months during the Lord's yoga nidra. Yoga nidra, the word nidra means sleep, yoga means yoga. So he has this mystical sleep that he has, and that occurs during the time of the Chaturmasya. Chaturmasya means the 4 months of the rainy season, right? So normally there's no festivals in these times. So we have to see. In Sri Rangam, there may be some festivals during that time, but in some temples, there may not be at all. I know in the Madhva, in Udupi, the Madhvas, they have their Utsava deity and they put their Utsava deity to sleep. So there really isn't any festivals that they can do for those 4 months, because their Utsava deity, their festival deity, is sleeping. So this is the time of sleeping of the Lord in Svetadvipa, and the 4 months of the rainy season represent like our 8 hours. We have 24 hours in a day, and we have approximately 8 hours when we sleep at night. So that will be a third of the year, a third of the day, right, that we sleep. And then the Lord, similarly, he sleeps for a third of the year. So again, 4 months, which concludes with the celebration of Uttana Ekadasi. So it starts with the Shayana Ekadasi, which is lying down, means Shaina means lying down. So the lying down and sleeping Ekadasi. And then the Uttana Ekadasi is getting up from sleep Ekadasi. In the middle, there's an Ekadasi called Parshva Parivartana in Chatumasya, where the Lord is actually turned on from one side onto the other side as he sleeps, because just as we do when we sleep, we're on one side, but then we turn over on the other side. Okay. So the Vasanta Utsava. So we're talking about all these different types of festivals here. So we talked about the fact that during Chatumasya there's not usually any festivals observed in Agama temples. So the Vasanta Utsava, Vasanta means, we just had Vasanta Panchami. Vasanta means springtime, right? Vasanta Utsava is held in springtime. Is generally held for 7 days, but for 3 days in some temples. During the day, the deity is served with proper attendance suited to the climatic conditions of the season, and there's a procession in the evening within and without of the temple. So in Sri Rangam, the way they do this, they have a special Vasanta Mandapa inside a garden. There's a beautiful garden there. There's many gardens in the Sri Rangam temple. The Sri Rangam temple area is about 250 acres, so it's a very huge temple. So there are gardens inside the temple, and inside one of the gardens, there's what's called a Vasant Mandapa, which is a porch or a platform area like that, where the Lord goes and he sits there, and it's a very beautiful scene in the garden, and they play musical instruments and they have recitations and things like that, so the Lord can enjoy the springtime season. So during the day, the deity is served with proper attendance suited to the climatic conditions of the season, and there are processions to the evening or within and without the temple. As in the annual festivals, right, there is Ankurapanam, which means that first of all you have to worship Bhumi and Varaha on the ground, and you have to collect dirt. So that's called Bhumi Puja, and then you do the Mitsangraharana. You collect the Mritika, which is the mud of the earth, sacred earth, from that, and then you have to sow seeds. And so this Ankurapanam, Ankura means a seed or a sprout. You have to sow seeds to show the efficacy of the festival. So that happens first. So the Ankurapanam, and this is all done in the Yagashala of the temple. Then there are homas, or different fire ceremonies or yagas that are done in the Yagashala of the temple, and other items, and in every festival, right? So there is no Dwaja Arohanam, right? For the Vasant Utsava is what they're talking about. For the springtime Utsava festival, there's no Dwaja Arohanam. There's no hoisting of a flag with Garuda on it. So therefore, at the end of the festival, there's no Dwaja Avarohanam, or bringing down of the flag. So no flag is done for that. On the 7th day in the evening, the Utsava deity is carried through the streets on the horse vehicle. The horse vehicle, again, the Kuridurai Vahana in Tamil. And the festival is concluded with the Avabrich bathing, right, in a tank or river early in the night. The car festival or the Garuda Vahana, the Garuda vehicle, are enjoined in some texts, but it does not appear to be practiced in any temple. So now we have some other descriptions of festivals. The birthdays of, or the Jayantis of Rama, so Rama Navami, right? Narasimha Chaturdasi, and Sri Krishna Jayanti, which is Janmastami, right, are celebrated when the deities of these, the idols of these deities are given bath and special worship is offered. Invariably, there's a procession for the Utsava deities, right, on these days. In particular, on the day known as Sri Jayanti, which is the Janmastami, the Krishna Janmastami, there's a festival called Shikyotsava, known as Uriyadi in Tamil. The Agamas enjoin the celebrations of the birthdays of other Vibhava avatars like Vamana and Varaha, and there's so many, right, as well. But the present day practice does not seem to be attached much significance to them. So particularly Rama, Narasimha, and Krishna, who are Purna avatars, they attach a lot of interest to performing the festivals. Now we can note that the Sri Krishna's appearance occurs during the Chatumasya, so therefore it's one of those exceptions to the rule that there are no festivals during Chatumasya. Yeah. Okay, so the Agamas enjoin the celebrations of birthdays of other Vibhavas as well, but it's not practiced these days. Okay, nice. So the mentions of different birthdays are there in the different tantras for instance, Matsya in the Vishnu Tantra, Kurma in the Shesha Samhita, some others, Varaha in Shesha Samhita, Narasimha in Shesha Samhita, Vaman and Trivikrama in Shesha Samhita. Of course, Vaman and Trivikrama is the same incarnation. Jamanagni would be Parashurama, and Kalki, and who is yet to come, but still his appearances can be celebrated. Rama represented by bow and arrows in some other samhitas, having no weapons in some places. Okay, so the Deepotsava. Okay, so that's all the Vibhava incarnation appearance days. The Deepotsava in the Kartika month. So in the month of Kartika, also known as Damodar month, right? Or, which comes just before Margashirsha, right? So we have the Deepotsava, or the lighting of lamps. And specifically, on one day they'll light a very, very big lamp, very, very big fire. Is enjoined to be celebrated in the text, and practice bears testimony to it. However, there is some disparity in the Vaikhanasa and Pancharatras regarding the proper date of the celebrations of this festival, as also those of the birthdays of Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, and Narasimha. So between the Pancharatra and the Vaikhanasans, they have some differences in how we calculate the birthdays of Rama, Krishna, and Narasimha, and also this Kartika Deepam. So rules about the duration of the Tithi and the constellations, or the nakshatras, right, concerned account for the differences, right? So sometimes you'll see on Panchangams, you'll see about when the Pancharatrans follow Sri Krishna Jayanti, and when others follow it. So there'll be some discrepancy, and even between certain mutts like Ahobala Mutt and some of the others, people have slight differences in when they observe. It's meaning one day or the other day, or not very far apart, but just one day or the next day. So on the day following the advent of Uttarayana, okay, so we have two ayanas. We have two divisions in the year. We have Dakshinayana, when the sun is in the south, and Uttarayana, when the sun is in the north. And these are the two halves of the year, and they are separated at January 14th, and also 6 months from January 14th. So January 14th, before January 14th, the sun will be in Dakshinayana, and after January 14th, it'll go into Uttarayana. So what it's talking about here is the advent, or the observance of the winter solstice, right? Is called Makara Sankranti Day. So January 14th or January 15th is called Makara Sankranti, right? That Sankranti, of course, is the day when the sun goes to the next zodiac sign. The sun goes around into the next zodiac sign, and Makara means fish. Makara, no, Pisces means fish. Makara Sankranti. Anyway, Makara is a type of mythical animal. Yeah, Makara Sankranti. Anyway, so there's a hunting festival on that day, just like there was on Vijayadasami, in which the Utsava deity is taken to a distant place. Celebrations like the Holy Bath and others are gone through, after which the deity is brought back to the temple. Then we have what's called the Float Festival, or which is also called the Lavanotsava. It's also called the forgetting the name of it. The boat fest. There's a boat festival. The floating festival is conducted in the cold season of Magh and Palguna months for 9, 7, 5, 3 days, or even one day, and the Utsav deity is taken and put on a ceremonial float and floated in the temple tank. Normally in a tank for 3 or 5 or 7 times round. They take the deity around the tank by pulling with ropes and taking it around there. So this is celebrated with great pomp. The float is to be respected as Adi Shesha. So probably Adi Shesha will be invoked. The divine serpent couch of the Lord is invoked in the float, and then he's taken around. So So all and sundry may not touch it or occupy it. Well, that's not exactly true, because a certain number of people will go with the palanquin of the Lord onto the boat, and they will go around with the deity. The Acharya, or the head priest, the Archakas, or the other priests, and the Vaishnavas, who render service to the deity and recite the Vedas, are the only persons permitted to occupy it. Okay, so everybody can't occupy it, but some of the priests' attendants can go on the boat. In the float, a decorated quadrangle is constructed where the Utsava deity with Sri Devi and Bhudevi, along with him, Ubaya Nachiyas, the two goddesses, right, are placed. There is to be a different float to be occupied by those who play on musical instruments and women dancers. Okay, so I've never seen that happen. This is not in general practice in the present day. Okay, so the Agamas say that there could be a different float, and there could have dancers and musicians on those floats. And usually the temple musicians will play Nadeshwaram, which is a type of Shanai type of pipe instrument, and tabil, which is a type of drum, like that. So in case of Kerala, in Kerala temples, they have even 5 types of music, which is called Panchavadyam, which I think we mentioned before a little bit. So there are numerous other festivals like Dolotsava, Davanotsava, Kodai Utsava. Kodai Utsava means so Dolotsava is also called Unjal in Tamil. Unjal, which means swing festival. Davanotsava, I'm not quite sure what that is. Kodai is a umbrella where they have processions with big umbrellas, very famous in Kanchipuram. Kodai Utsava, summer festival, and others which are held each in some of the temples. Chitra Purnima, Hari Netam Peruku. I'm not sure what the Chitra Purnima means, the full moon of Chitra month, or Chaitra month, which comes in April. Yeah. So Padi Netam Peruku, I'm not sure about that. Palava Utsava. Palava means leaves, so I'm not quite sure about that. And others are peculiar to certain temples in some areas only. Yeah, so I'm not surprised I haven't heard about it. An important festival other than these is that of the birthdays of Alwars or Acharyas. So we'll find in the Panchangam, in the Sri Vaishnava calendar, we'll find that what we call the Tirunakshatra, the constellation appearance day of a particular Alwar and Acharya, is conducted for 10 days, right, in each case. The concluding session coinciding with the birthday. So if we know that either an Alwar or an Acharya has got a birthday, then they have a festival leading up to that, 9 days leading up, and the 10th day is the birthday of the Acharya or the Alwar. It is only in certain temples that all of them have their birthdays celebrated for 10 days. Normally, each has it in his place of birth. So wherever there was the birthplace of that Acharya or that Alwar, that temple there will perform, invariably they will perform the 10-day festival for that Acharya or Alwar. In other places, the celebration is conducted at least for the birthday, for the 1 day, but in the specific place, 10 days. Among the Alwars, Namalwar and Andal have their celebrations for 10 days in all temples. So Namal was very important. Andal is also very important. So they have special festivals for them. In many temples, the festival is conducted for all the 10 days in honor of the birthdays of Vedanta Deshika and Manavala Mahamuni. So depending upon whether the temple is run by the Wadagalai Sampradaya or the Tengalai sect of the Sampradaya, they'll honor Vedanta Deshika or Manavala Mahamuni. With the exception of some, the Alwars and Acharyas have worship with the recitation of the Vedas and Tamil compositions, all confined to the respective shrine itself. So they'll have a sub-shrine within the temple, either for Vedanta Deshika or for Manavala Mahamuni, or for some of the Alwars, different, maybe one Alwar or maybe 2 or 3 Alwars together in one shrine, like in Sri Rangam. So Tamil compositions all confined to the respective shrine itself. On the last day, that is the birthday, the deities are taken in procession through the streets with all the paraphernalia, as in the case of the deity of the Lord. In some temples, they are taken along with the deity of the Lord after the procession. No, along with the deity of the Lord. After the procession, they're worshipped along with the deity whose honors are conferred on them before they are taken to their own shrines. Okay, so that's very nice. So here's in the footnote, it's just saying Vishnu Tattva Samhita and Vishnu Tantra. However, there's no mention of the conduct of festivals for honoring these awas and acharyas. Okay, so during the procession through the streets, devotees from each house offer fruits like plantain, which is a type of banana, right? Mango, coconut, and others. The Archika priest has to offer them to the Lord without uttering any mantra. The devotees are to be shown God's favor by placing the setari, which is the pitam, on which the Lord's shoes are situated, on the head of the devotees, right? On their heads. People who render service on these occasions would get the fruit of performing a sacrifice. Special benefits are assured for those who participate in the car festival, pulling the chariot of the Lord. The Agamas have the unique distinction of liberalism by an open declaration that the touch of the untouchable, so if somebody's a Panchama or not even part of the caste system, is an untouchable, very low caste person, right? The touch of an untouchable on such occasions would not give rise to any defect or pollution. So that's interesting because amongst the Madhvas, right, the sannyasins, they never take part in pulling the car except on Makara Sankranti, one day, after which they take bath in the temple tank with water poured over the deity during the Avabrit Shnanam at the end of the festival to become purified again for a year. But during all the chariot festivals throughout the year, they do not pull the cars. They're the sannyasins. So whereas it's saying here that according to the Agamas, even if you're while pulling the car, if you touch somebody who's considered untouchable, it's not considered an offense or a pollution or a defect. So that's he's given a pramana or a quote, a sloka here from VK, which may mean Vishvaksena Samhita. I'm not sure. Anyway, not sure. The energy of all the people should be conserved and converge to bestow pointed attention on the conduct of the festival of the Lord. No other deity of the locality must have a festival during this period. So if there are other Devata temples around, like Shiva temples or other demigod temples, they shouldn't have festivals at the same time as the festival of Vishnu, according to the Vaishnava Agamas. So snapana, or bathing, giving an ablution to the deity, forms an important part of the contents of the Agamas, and it is of various kinds. Generally, it's given to the Dhruva bearer on a particular day of the week. So the main deity, the immovable deity or stone deity of the Lord, is bathed on one particular day of the week. So for instance, in Tirupati, according to Vaikanasa Agama, they're bathing the Lord on Fridays. Every week, but of course every day they bathe the Shnapana bearer or the Tirtha bearer, right? So there's always a form of the Lord that gets bathed every day, but the big form, which is immovable, the Dhruva bearer or Mula bearer, is bathed just one day a week. And to the Utsava bearer on fixed occasions. So the Tirtha bearer, which is smaller, or the Shnapana bearer, which is smaller than the Utsava bearer, the festival deity, may be bathed every day. But the Utsava deity, which is larger than the Tirtha and Shnapana and Bali bearers, right? That particular form of the deity and form of the Lord, that is bathed on special occasions like Ekadasi, the 11th day of the moon, either waning or waxing, Amavasya, which is the new moon day, and Shravana Nakshatra. The reason Shravana Nakshatra is the star of Lord Vishnu's birth star. So, and others. A special hall is required for the purpose. So the special mandapa or a special hall is required for that bathing. So that, we could call that a Shnapana mandapa, but in the temple it'll be a particular hall. Like in Sri Rangam, it can be done in different mandapas. Small pitchers or kalashas, like small pots, kumbhas or kalashas, right, are to be made of certain metals, so normally silver or copper, and materials and prescribed dimensions. the kinds of certain kinds of precious stones and of grains are to be procured and put there. The number of pitchers or number of pots varies according to the occasion. Sometimes there are 108 of them are required, and rarely 1,008. So we have this Sahasra Kalash Abhisheka, which is the biggest number of pots. But there can be any there can be 9, and there can be 18, and there can be 28, and there can be 108, and so many different numbers. And there's in the Agamas, it describes how they're all to be set out before they're used to bathe the deity. The particular spots, directions, and method according to which they're to be placed is detailed in many texts. For the offering of bath, apart from pure water, panchagavya, which is the 5 products of the cow, ghee, yogurt, milk, honey, ghee, yogurt, milk, cow dung, and cow urine, right? Curds, meaning yogurt, milk, honey, and other liquids are required, and they're to be filled in pots kept in specific places in different directions, right? So different manchas are given to sanctify the various substances mentioned above, each one. So when we do parikalpanam, or we're installing those patra sadhanam, right? Invoking deities into each one of these pots with the different ingredients, with different mantras, usually Veda mantras. These pitchers are to be honored with argya, padya, achmaniya, dhupa, deepa, naivedya, aratrika, meaning harti or arti, and or nirajana, and other upacharas or other services. So after invoking different deities in these pots of different substances, then we have to also worship them. So then, as per prescribed method in the text, the acharya must perform shnapana, or bathing of the deity, with the chanting of mantras enjoined to be used. So there are to be short intervals between the use of a certain number of pots, right, containing certain ingredients. So there's a certain order and a certain ingredients to come one after the other, and certain small intervals in between. During the intervals, the deity must be offered some upacharas, including naivedya. So they have to offer padyagachmaniya, they have to offer dhupa, deepa, and some naivedya like this, which is very normal for the different stages of Sri Vaishnava worship called asanas, sadasanas. There'll be 6 stages, and in each one of them, you'll offer dhupa, deepa, you'll offer agya, padya, achmaniya, like that. So then there's, during those intervals, the deity must be offered some upacharas, yes, including naivedya, a small amount of naivedya or food offerings. The Agama texts refer to other kinds of shnapana, or other kinds of bathing. And this bathing is called, most people call it abhishekam. Here it's called a mahabhishekam. In Tamil, it's called tirumanjanam by Sri Vaishnavas, which means auspicious washing, like that. Tiru meaning Shri, and Manjana meaning to cleanse. The Agama texts refer to different kinds of shnapana. Mahabhisheka is the name given to shnapana conducted on an elaborate scale, so it's very big. Worldly prosperity and the like are stated to accrue to those who undertake to conduct these bathings of these kinds of Mahabhishekam. When the work of shnapana is done to the deity, the priest who attends to this work must identify himself, take at first the holy water used for the purpose, right? So after the shnapana is performed, then we have what's called the charanamrita, or the tirtha, right? Is the leftover ingredients of the Lord, and the archika who has performed the abhishekam or the tirumanjanam, he has to also take the tirtha first. If this is not done, the work of shnapana is considered to be unfinished, right? So after all of the bathing of the Lord is done, the head priest, the priest who performed it, they have to take the tirtha of the Lord. They have to take the charanamrita. He will then distribute that water to the assembled there on that occasion. The holy water will be given thrice to each one. So everybody will take 3 sips. The person who receives it must take it without allowing even a drop to remain in his palm. And what to speak of letting it fall on the ground. So you normally have to hold a cloth underneath. You hold your hand underneath with a cloth, and the right hand on top of the cloth on your left hand, and then take 3 times, and then make sure that the hand is dried on the cloth, because you don't want any drops that are left over to fall on the ground. So those who take it must not wash their hands also, right? As it would then mean that the palm has become polluted by its touch with the lips. The holy water can never become unholy. And on the other hand, it purifies the lips and through them the entire body and the self there. The palm therefore becomes and remains pure. The present day custom of offering the holy water is at first in the temple every day when the puja and shnapana or bathing is done to certain persons who are acharya purushas or great acharyas, today, and who have their rights to receive it. So without the priest partaking, it has no sanction in the Agamas. Okay, so today they have this thing called Maryada, and people are honored in certain order, and they have the right to take the Charanamrita after a certain person from another family of another, and they have the ancestral right to take it. But what he's saying is in the Agamas, it's not stated like that. The priest should take it first, and then he should distribute it to the others. And of course, if he distributes to the others, he can distribute from senior to junior according to some system. That's fine. The Arjita Sevas. Now, Arjita Sevas are some of these festivals and things like that are done in it's a type of karma done for a particular desire of a devotee who pays for them, the yajamana, or sponsors them, right, and therefore pays for them. So in Tirumala especially, temple of which is according to Vaikanasa Agama, Lord Venkateshwara's famous place for people pay for a particular seva, and it's done in their name with the sankalpa according to their desire. So the Ajita Sevas in the temple, as in those of Tirumala, are to be treated as coming under the Kamya kind. So before, when we said there's no Naimittika or Kamya types of festivals, actually there is, particularly like in places like Tirumala. And the Madhvas do it also in Udupi, right? That you can pay for even for a Ratha festival to go on or whatever. So several shortcomings are bound to happen while attending to temple worship, preparing for temple building, making of deities, right? And other items concerned with the temple. Hence, the Agama texts have enjoined and expounded the rites of expiation or prayaschita, right, or atonement in detail. So these acts are all the more necessary because the people who visit temples and worship God there, defects of commission and omission detract from the sanctified presence of God in the deities there. So much so, people who attend the temple cannot get the benefit of their worship. Hence, the Agamas, and particularly the Vaikanasa type of Agamas, right, contain many chapters of prayaschita or expiation or atonement for different defects, sins of commission or omission that occur, or defects that occur in the worship. A very important kind of expiatory rite is noticed in the Parameshwara and Padma Samhitas. This is called Tula Arohana. Tula Arohana. Tula means a balance, a scale that balances against weights, something against a weight, like a scale, for the lapses committed by the ruling king. So the ruling king of the area, who is to be weighed in a balance against gold. And actually, there are some temples where you can go and you can do this. You can offer your weight, maybe if you don't have gold or jewels or something like that, or silver, you can offer your weight in some other thing, in fruit or in something which is a little cheaper, like that. I know some person who went and offered their weight in the Balaji temple in Los Angeles. One lady went and offered her weight in watermelons, to the Lord. So this is called Tulabara, or it's also called Tula Arohana here. For lapses, the ruling king was weighed against gold. The pieces of gold should then be distributed amongst the deserving. So that would mean to Brahmins first of all, and then to other deserving people. The practice of weighing a person against gold or silver or any other object may be anterior to the period when the Samhitas came to include it as part of expiatory rites. This practice has been continuing even to the present day in some form or other, and not necessarily as part of expiation for shortcomings of the conduct of the temple worship. So you can just do it even if you're not doing it for defects in temple worship. You can just do it as an offering to the deity. Among these rituals, the pavitra, this is another ritual here, the pavitra, which is called pavitrotsava, the offering of silk garlands to the deity, is most important and is held to be of paramount significance in making amends for lapses, derelictions, or imperfections in the worship throughout the year. So the pavitra is the name given to strings made up of smooth, fine, white threads, folded 3 or 4 times or more, prepared by maidens or women who have aged or widows. They have to be purified with the Astra mantra, right? Viryaya Straya Pat, like that. They are to adorn the deity, right? To adorn ritual pots, mandalas, which are ritual diagrams, right? And the pit where the fire is lit, the Agni Kunda in the Yagashala of the temple and other places. So they go in different places. The Lord is to be given a sacred bath and worship with all upacharas, all the different services. Homa, or fire ceremony, must be then performed. The Vedas must be recited and music played upon instruments. The Acharya will appeal to God to forgive him for all the lapses in his service rendered throughout the year. The Brahmins, recluses, Vaikanasas, and others will attend to be suitably honored at the end of the session, which may last from 3 to 7 days. Okay. The last day, which is celebrated with the Purnahuti, or the last oblation into the sacred fire. The fruits which accrue to the Acharya, the head priest, and the other archakas or temple priests, the Vedic scholars and others who contribute to the successful execution of this in some way or other, are stated to be according to their aptitudes and expectations. The occasion for the conduct of this festival is only in the Dakshinayana, so when the sun is in the south, like that. So the acts of expiation are varied according to the nature of the lapse and of the act itself. On occasions when impurity or asaucha, right, this is also called in Tamil titu, right, stains the archaka or the temple priest, God cannot be worshipped by or through him. So when he has titu, right, when he has asaucham, right, impurity, for births and deaths in his family or extended family, and there's other reasons also. Some arrangements are to be made to conduct the daily worship through others who are also purified to attend to it. After the period of pollution is over, right, is over, Homa, or fire ceremony, must be performed in the fire in the temple Yagshala, and worship has to be recommenced by the archaka, that is. Hopefully that we have other people to perform the worship during the lapses, right? The possible lapses and defects are classified under several headings, such as not doing the work of worship at a proper time, swerving from the correct path of good conduct, and so on. In general, both the Agamas lay stress to on the power of mantras. So they prescribed, that means both Agamas, meaning the Pancharatra and the Vaikanasa, both ways of worshipping Vishnu. So they prescribe not merely homa or fire sacrifice in the sacred fire on occasions, but also japa or repetition of certain mantras. This practice is to be traced to the Smriti texts, which are directly inspired by the Kalpa Sutras or the Vedas, right, which deal with the ritualism in the Vedas, like that. So there is a certain discipline which one should observe while worshiping the Lord in the temple. One must not approach the temple riding on a vehicle, or wearing sandals, or with a distracted mind. Music, dance, discourses on the holy nature must not be stopped while they are in progress in the temple. One must not worship the Lord with his body covered with a cloth. So we see that although in North India people wear shirts and kurtas and everything to go and do worship, right, and even the archakas, even the pujaris do, right? In South India, they don't even cover the upper part of the body, but the angavastram or the chadar is worn wrapped around the waist. And this is okay because in South India, it's much hotter than in North India in general. And so it's not a problem. So, but this is one of the regulations in South India, and in fact, all the people coming to a temple have to strip to the waist. All the men have to strip to the waist and wear the angamas around the waist in Kerala. In going into temples in Kerala, it's a standard in Kerala. So no one should spit in the temple. So this is going to run through some of the offenses and things and lapses that we can what's called apachara or aparada that we can perform in seva aparada or seva apachara. One sins while worshiping the deity. One must not enter the shrine after having taken food as a nimantra in a shraddha, right? So if you're invited as a Brahmin to go and be in the shraddha ceremony of a person to represent Vishnu or the Ashwinis or the Vaishnavas like that, right? Then you cannot then go and enter the shrine and do the worship of the Lord like that for some time, right? So incoherent talk has to also be avoided there. So we don't talk mundane subject matters while we're worshiping the deity. So then in the Varaha Purana, chapter 108, there are 32 apacharas or aparadas in seva of the Lord, but chapter 65 in the printed text identified by the editor of the Pancharatraksha Adyar edition deals with the subject as dealing with the subject does not treat it. Okay, so those who go away from the temple, ignoring the discourse that is held, said to become deaf and dumb. If there's a discourse on philosophy going on in the temple and you leave it, that's not before it's over. That's not supposed to be good. So again, one should not stretch his legs or lie in the temple. The Lord should not be worshipped with flowers intended for some other deity. One should not smell the flowers and food preparations that are intended for God before it's offered to God. This practice continues now also in a way when they're taken by the assistants or the priests or the paricharakas, the assistants to the priests, whose nose and mouths are covered with a cloth when they bring the Lord's naivedyam to be offered to the Lord, the bhoga to be offered to the Lord and made into mahaprasadam. During festivals, one should not bathe feeling that he has become impure by the touch of others. Remaining without bowing to the Lord during festivals and raising one hand while bowing constitutes offenses. Lying down, taking food, wasteful talk, loud talk, purposeless argument, crying, shedding tears, quarrels, attacks on others, and such other activities are forbidden in the temple. Censuring or extolling others, right? So either blaming them or praising them, right? Taking what is not offered to the deity, not offered to God, not offering fruits and other things when they're available in a particular season, right? Seasonal fruits, right? Sitting down without the hind part touching the ground, in other words, squatting, reverential salutation of any person, silence before elders instead of praising, self-praise, praising oneself, abuse of the gods are deemed as offenses. Those who consider the deity as metal and the preceptor or the guru as simply a human being, they also go to hell, according to different statements of the scriptures. One should stand to the right of God and worship. Okay, so if the deity is facing you, his right-hand side, if you're facing him, your left-hand side should be to the Lord. So normally with Vishnu, when we pay our respects or we astanga pranams, when we do pranams to the Lord, our left side should be to the Lord. That means we should be on his right side. So although worship of God, so in other words, if the deity is facing east, we can be facing north and our left side will be to the deity. Although worship of God with devotion and uttering the name of God is recommended as a means of salvation, especially in the age of Kali, right? Yet the archa form is strongly recommended for worship in the Agamas. Even heinous crimes would not affect a person who commits them if he were simply to have a look at the archa form of God, the deity form of God, from foot to head. So we normally look at the feet first and then up to the head. All right, so that brings us up to chapter 10.
Om Namo